I've been getting a lot of questions about how everything grows, so I'm going to take you on a quick tour, so just bear with me. Alright, these 6 rows are all tomatoes and peppers, so I have them running off the same nutrients, whereas these 2 rows right here are beans, herbs, peppers, squash, and cucumbers, and they're running off the pepper nutrients. Alright, so these are all different types of bush beans. I'm doing my morning feeding so you can hear the water hitting the ground cover below. But anyways, these white lines run to an end cap, so the nutrients can build up pressure, and it comes down a 1/16 inch air diameter hose, which allows for really slow feeding. As you can see on these 2 rows, since I didn't have tomatoes growing down, vining down, I decided to do some cucumbers and squash. Down here, these are little 3-gallon grow containers, and they just have a 3/4 inch hole taken out of the center of them, so the metal pole can slide right through them. And there's just cocoa coir in them. Up here, it's cocoa and perlite, about 20% perlite, 80% cocoa. It just allows better drainage. These are all peppers. I'm doing a lot of super hots and also some sweet peppers. All my seeds this year came from Pepper Joe's and Pucker Butt, so I'm really excited about what they all have. I started these 2 rows about 3 weeks after I started all the tomato and pepper plants, so they're a little bit behind, but they're taking off really quick. Everything was direct sowed instead of added as seedlings, so like I said, they're just a little bit behind. I've got some good zucchini, some cucumbers coming on. They're just really starting to hit their stride. What I'll be doing probably tomorrow or the next day is adding a 10-foot trellis right here behind this row of towers, and I'm going to allow the cucumbers to just really take over. You can see I do different experiments, and this is just a Rockwell cube, I think with a Carolina Reaper in it. It's doing pretty well, and it doesn't need to be watered nearly as much. Here's some basil. Here's a bunch of different herbs, cilantro and basil maybe. A whole lot of basil. Alright, so all these plants are hooked up to their own reservoir, pump and timer, and I've just got a little 633, let's see if you can see that, GPH pump in here, and it's able to push the nutrients 8 feet high and to 18 different towers, so it's a pretty powerful little pump. I'm really happy with it. Over here are my rows of tomatoes and peppers, and like I said, they're all growing in cocoa and perlite mixture. You can really just do cocoa, but all these white containers, they have a pattern of holes that allows the nutrients to flow from container to container to container, and then once it's done, it'll basically, the water will just kind of flow out and you'll see it hit the ground. I go for about 1 to 3% runoff, and that's just enough to kind of flush the old salts that weren't used out of the growing medium, so I don't ever end up with toxicities. There's always a good balance of nutrients in the grow medium. So over here, I did a video on this yesterday, but it's just a little PVC manifold that I made that's hooked up to a pretty powerful pump down in here, and it has 6 valves that control each row. That way I can get a really balanced amount of nutrients and runoff to each tower. So I'm trying to make it as efficient as possible. What I'm going to be doing is weighing all my produce this year that I get from this area. It's a 35 by 30 foot area, and I'm keeping track of all my nutrients that are going into this grow. So I'm going to be able to really break it down at the end of the season as far as how much produce I grew and how much it ended up costing. So yeah, here we go. I made this little container. A lot of hydroponic pumps, they don't come waterproof because they're meant for indoor, but they have good cycle time, so you just kind of have to work with them. So what I did is I took an old Epsom salt container, drilled some holes in it, and was able to kind of keep my timer a lot better protected from the elements. So I'm turning the irrigation on right now. You can see that we're already getting some runoff, but I want you guys to kind of be able to see everything that happens. Alright, you can see the water just kind of flows really slowly. My timer, I was doing intervals before. I was feeding 3 times a day, usually at 15 minutes, and that was enough to start getting my runoff. But after talking to a guy from Hydro Gardens, they're a really big nutrient supplier, been around since the 70s. Basically, he was telling me that I was feeding way too little, and instead of doing these big feeds where I'm taking the medium from dry to saturated, I need to just keep it at field saturation and do smaller bursts. So I'm doing 60 seconds on and usually 30 minutes off. It depends on if the weather changes. If it gets a lot hotter, I'll do it every 20 minutes. But in general, I'm running through a reservoir which is about 275 gallons every 2 days to 3 days if the weather is cooler in the 90s, but about every day if it's 100 degrees. I just get a lot more evaporation and transpiration. So let me walk up this ladder. This whole garden is built using 3/4 inch conduit from Lowe's and a lot of PVC. I use 1 inch Schedule 40 for the containers to rest on. So yeah, I hope you guys like it. Let me know if you have any questions.